This is the Bond road bike of Emma Pooley. It's a very special bike, firstly because it's just won a race. Secondly, it's still got its race-winning mud on there. Thirdly, this is an aluminium bike, which is quite a rare thing on GCN Pro bikes. And then finally, Emma is actually here to talk us through it. So Emma, your bike is made out of aluminium. Bond have just recently launched within the last year. And as well as being made out of 6067 aluminium, they also can make completely custom bikes, that's right. And so this one is totally to your spec.
Yep, yeah, I gave them measurements, which is always, well, it was a bit scary actually, because if it was terrible to ride, then it would have been my fault. I couldn't blame anyone else. So yeah, I actually designed the geometry based on my favourite race bike from the past, but I changed it a bit to make it shorter and smaller.
Your time trial bike is based around 650 wheels, right? But this one is 700C. So how have you managed to sort of get the position the same?
Well, yeah, that's the tricky thing. I mean, ideally, someone my size, or even some people slightly larger, would ride on 650s on a road bike too. But because I do a few road races and sporties and things where, in an emergency, you want to take a spare wheel, and you know that no neutral service is going to have 650s. So I did want a 700C road bike, and the problem is that obviously if you make the bike shorter, the wheels get closer together and you get more toe crossover, and the handling can get a bit funny. So you have to just be careful with the fork brake so you have enough trail that it steers properly. The reason I wanted the top tube to be shorter is that then you can have a slightly longer stem, which makes it less twitchy at the front.
But then obviously you shorten the top tube and you bring that front wheel closer to your toes,
and then
right?
you get big toe crossover. So that's why I'm actually going to try and get a fork with more rake to it so that I can get more trail. I've always had toe crossover. When you know you've got toe crossover, it's fine. Any small rider, I think, would know what I mean. Yeah. It just makes track standing really difficult. Yeah. But I was never going to be able to track stand anyway. I'm not skilled, so.
There's often a bit of debate, it seems, about the whole kind of 650 versus 700C in terms of, I think because mountain bikes, larger wheels typically roll faster, so people will therefore think that a 700C wheel will roll faster than 650. But you won your time trial world championships on 650 wheels, right?
Yeah, I won all the time trials I did well in was on 650 wheels, and. I mean, if you look at the maths and the physics of it, it's fairly straightforward, the analysis, and it's been discussed many times. And there is a slightly higher rolling resistance with smaller wheels, but it's very slight, and it's more than made up for by the fact that the wheel is lighter and smaller, so you're lower to the ground, so you're more aerodynamic. And just as a small rider, you actually can get an aerodynamic position. Like with a 700C time trial bike, I can't get low enough at the front end to be even vaguely aerodynamic. So I mean, any benefit of lower rolling resistance is totally negated by the aerodynamic resistance.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about wheels then as well, because these are from Sense, which is a completely new brand and one that you're actually quite involved with.
Yeah, so I'm co-founder actually, and which is cool. I don't actually make them. I can't tour a wheel, but I know the guy does, and he makes really fantastic wheels. And I went to him with the problem of needing 650s for my time trial bike, and because I've been training and racing on like some old training wheels from 2009, and wheel technology has come on a lot since then, just in terms of weight and aerodynamics. And Tim Smith, he's a real expert so basically he's designed 650s with tubeless tyres, and to try and get the rim tyre boundary, which is where most of the aerodynamic flow disruption happens, to try and get that as smooth as possible, so that because it really does affect the aerodynamics of the wheel and the drag, and the smaller you are, and if you're smaller, you generally have less muscle mass and less power. Like the more you can reduce your drag, the better, which is kind of the same for all riders, but is much more noticeable if you're 50 kilos and threshold is 250 watts than if your threshold is 400 or something. So yeah, so the 650s are quite exciting, and then the 700s are based on that. They're designed, we're going to have certainly a range design of 700 Sense wheels for smaller riders on the road, again with as low rolling resistance as possible, low spoke count, and there'll be a weight limit on them basically, so they are small rider specific. Yeah.
The rear hub on there, I'm looking at now, because it's a Powermeter hub, right?
Yeah, it's brand new, and it's in the hub, and it's less than 300 grams, and new design by someone based in Taiwan, Bruce Wei, and he's working with the guy who makes Sense wheels to incorporate this Powermeter. I mean, we'll have an option without a Powermeter, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah. 300 grams for a rear hub is not bad, is it?
Yeah.
And to have a power meter in there as well, that's pretty cool.
Exactly.
You've also got another power meter on here, so I'm guessing the wheel's quite new. So that's a Rotor Twin Power.
That's right, yeah.
And with Q rings.
Yes, I love Q rings. I got onto them in 2009 on the Selle test team, and it took me a couple of months, I think, to adapt to them. And then now if I ride on round rings, I feel really uncomfortable. So because I've adapted to it, I wanted to keep riding them. I really believe they work for me. And Rotor are kind enough to sponsor me with them, so yeah. And the twin power means that we can look at like checking the accuracy of the new hub.
Yeah. What length cranks are they on there?
165s.
165s.
Yeah, and I'm
tempted to go shorter.
Yes, I've tried going shorter. Last year I rode on 155s that Rotor made specially. But I was pretty shit last year, and I don't know if that was the crank up. I think it was actually more me. I strongly believe, and I think this is something that small riders don't often, especially when you just get into cycling, it's not something you think about. I would ride like 175s when I started cycling because that was what was on the bike and that was what was available. And obviously when you start cycling, you don't need to have the most expensive of everything, but fit is really important just in terms of comfort and how much you enjoy riding your bike. And I honestly hated cycling for the first year because the saddle didn't fit me, the bike didn't fit me, and I was cold all the time. And then I found the right saddle, got a different bike, and bought some arm warmers, and I felt much better. But I also remember my first proper team, and they were an awesome team. They were brilliant for me. Like I wouldn't have got where I did without this little specialised team in Switzerland, and they had a great team director. But I still remember the team mechanic saying, "Oh yeah, we've built your time trial bike," because I got selected for the World Championships at the last minute. "Built your time trial bike. We've put 175 cranks on it because in a time trial you need more power." So they put longer cranks on my time trial bike because I needed more power. And I was thinking, well, you need power in a road race too. And if you need more, like if longer is always better, you just ride the longest crank possible for anything. And they've shown like there's proper science behind showing that crank length is largely insignificant as long as you can adapt to the length. So you could ride small or long. But the problem is that if you're very small, you're limited in the length in that, like I hit my stomach with my knees if the crank's really long, so which is really uncomfortable. So yeah, I'm a big believer in small cranks, and I think it's something that small riders should consider.
The race obviously that we were talking about was the KOM challenge, so 100 kilometres uphill with some ridiculously steep pitches towards the top particularly. What are the gear ratios that you've got on there at the minute? What size chain rings and cassette?
50-34 at the front and a 28 at the back.
28.
So, I mean, it's a perfectly fine gear for training on lots of hills, but when your 25% pitches come at the end of a 4-hour race and you're at 3,000 metres altitude, I thought, maybe I should have arranged a 30 at the back, but I got it up. And but I was glad that I took it steady just before the steep bit.
Yeah. You got up exceedingly fast, we should stress. And then that's an Ultegra Di2 group set. Any specific reason you've gone for Di2? I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, I guess, but...
Well, it's funny, I never had electric gears when I was racing pro. I did on my time trial bike in London and Valkenburg, thanks to British Cycling, but I never had electric gears to race on. And I have been dropped by people who could effortlessly shift into the big ring at the top of a climb, and I was struggling trying to get into the big ring, so I really wanted to try it, and I have not been disappointed. The functionality is just insanely good. I'm really happy with it.
Let's go on to finishing kit then, shall we? So you've got that 70mm 3T stand we talked about earlier on. Are they 38mm bars?
Yes.
38 centimetre rather, not millimetre. That'd be a bit weird.
I mean, I'd like small bars, but that would be too small.
It would be a little bit small, yeah. And so you say you'd go for even smaller than 38?
Yeah. You don't need a bar that's any wider than your shoulders, but it's quite hard to find a narrower bar than that. And I really like the 3T bars because of the shape of the drops, and they basically, width is one thing, but the other thing is the depth of the scoop, if you see what I mean. So I can get the hoods really close to my hands. And
then Speedplay pedals as well.
Yeah.
A long running.
Yeah. Again, I've been riding on Speedplay since 2007, and I've tried to change because they're so expensive, and they're like for walking around. If you want to go to the cafe or stop for a pee or something, sometimes you get gravel in the cleats and it's not ideal, but they just feel so good. And I tried riding others and I just cannot get on with them. I just love the functionality of them and how they feel and the float. Lastly then, a subject very close to my heart, the aesthetics of the bike. Now, it being a custom bike, it's custom colourway too? Yep, totally.
It's a very cool colour. compliment you on your choice.
Thank you very much. Actually, I wanted a slightly darker one, but it's really hard to assess the colour when you see it on an email. So I'm really happy with it. It stands out, that's for sure. And I personally, I quite like blue, and I'm fed up of having pink stuff, so did not want a pink bike.
Yeah, and all the Bond bikes have got that typical black top tube as well, right? Which
yeah, there's actually an engineering feature as well as an aesthetic. I mean, it makes them very recognisable. They have the logo down there, but that's actually you can treat the surface of the aluminium to save a bit of weight. Yeah, so it's quite cool.
Cool fact.
Yeah.
Nice one.
I don't know exactly how, but I should check that before I say it.
Great stuff. Well, Emma, thanks so much for talking us through. That is a thoroughly interesting bike.
Thank you very much. Thanks for me.
Well, what a super cool bike. We had to let Emma go because she's actually getting ready for a cycle tour. Believe it or not, this bike is going to go from winning a 100-kilometre uphill race to doing a cycle tour around Taiwan, which I think is super cool. Do make sure you give this video a big thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe to GCN as well if you don't already. To do that, just click on the globe. And if you want to see a couple of other videos to check out, we've got Vincenzo Nibali's pro bike. He won the men's event at the KOM Challenge. That one is just over there. Or to see a video about how Matt and I got on at the KOM Challenge, and I'm warning you now, it's not quite as well as either Vincenzo or indeed Emma, but that one is just down there.